My name is Twylla Brown, and I'm the owner of Twylla Spices and Essentials. It's a spice company that focuses on additive and preservative-free spices as well as vegan. And I do have 3 blends that are salt-free because I want to focus on health versus just, preservatives, additives, and unnecessary things in spices that we get when we shop local at the grocery store. I've been doing this since 2017. I started because I wanted a food truck and I wanted to sell seasonings to raise money for the food truck. But I fell in love with the seasonings versus the food truck, primarily because food trucks are a lot of work. But people were still able to enjoy my food without having the food truck. So I just kept the business going, and today currently I have 13 blends, and then I have 3 meal kits also. My mother was from Arkansas, and so I had all my family, food is a vital part. You go to Arkansas and they say, come on over for a light lunch, and it's 7 courses. That's a light lunch. And so that's how I grew up. Even after my mom moved up north and my grandmother, food was still a vital part. I can remember my grandmother not being able to walk and do lots of things, but one thing she did do was sit at the table at Thanksgiving and roll out those biscuits and those homemade rolls and pound cake, and she would show me and teach me, how to do those things. My mother was a good cook, but my grandmother was a great cook. And I was always in the kitchen. I was the oldest, so of course, and I was the girl, so that was a big responsibility too. I had a younger brother, and so I cooked for him a lot. We always had those big family gatherings and church functions, cooking at church. So food was how I grew up. That was the thing that brought the family together, was the holidays and the food. And so even as my children grew up, I always made sure they had good food. They didn't eat hot dogs at the family barbecue. They ate chicken and ribs. So, you can't put a hot dog and baked beans on my kids' plate. They're like, well, where's the rest of the food? Because mom was used to cooking. They were used to eating good food. And just the flavors, it invokes feelings, and so of love and happiness, and so that's where my love of spices and foods came in at, just from an early age, cooking. So it was natural for me to want to share that with other people, whether it was the food truck, the spice business, or whatnot. Food has always been, our house was the house to come to get if you want something good to eat. So everybody knew if I invited you over, or you didn't even really need an invitation, they could just show up and the first thing they say, what you got cooking in there? Because they knew something was in there. The spice part came about because I was looking for a way to raise money for the food truck. So I created one, thinking that I could just sell that one, and the revenue from the first blend that I made was gonna be for the food truck. So I was gonna put that money away. Every sale I was gonna put away. But then it just kind of, I just started making more blends, and then the food truck kind of became a distant second. Like it wasn't what was driving me anymore, because I really enjoyed making the different blends and challenging myself to see what I could come up with. I'm a cook that does not measure, so the challenge for me was I had to write a recipe down, because every spice, if I'm gonna sell it, has to taste the same every single time. So that's really how it started, just wanting to raise money for a dream that I thought was the dream that I had. I chose to do spices because it was it was a part of me. I mean, primarily I love to cook. I loved to feed people. I loved people getting together, laughing, having a good time. And so the spices was important to me because it was part of me. People could taste me, my personality on a plate, and it would bring people together. So the spices was something I've always cooked since I was like 10 years old, and it was what I really love to do. So I like adding different flavors together. I like the fact that the blends that I make are, they're all inclusive. Like, that's the only thing you'll need. So the spices was important to me because I just love the taste of good food and what it does at a family gathering. It brings people together. People compliment, talk about how good it is. They may want your recipe. So I wanted people to enjoy food just as much as I enjoyed food, but I wanted them to enjoy good food. So good seasoned food is how I grew up, and I just wanted people to experience that as well. So I created the business because of the food, the type of business, because you're right, I could have done anything to raise money for the food truck. I'm a cake decorator. I could have baked, I could have sold cakes, but my heart is with the savory, the savory part of things. I like them both, but part of it is also in California, there's so many bakeries, so many people doing cakes, and I wanted to be unique, and I wanted to be different, and I wanted to bring a part of my upbringing, the South, to California, to even possibly merge two cultures, because it's primarily a lot of Mexican food, and that's soul food in itself. And so I just wanted to, that's why the savory side of things, as far as food, spices, and everything was concerned, was why I gravitated more towards that. So I do not have a formal business background, but I've had multiple businesses. I used to be a licensed preschool teacher, daycare, and I actually, in Ohio, my house was a licensed bakery as well. And I did everything just on pure instinct. I don't write business plans. I don't take out loans and ask people for money. I get the urge to do something. I'm very spontaneous, and it's what I try and I go for. So even in starting the spice business, I did not have a business background. But what I did know, I knew what profit and loss was. I knew the basics. I didn't know formally what to do. And so I have been blessed enough to find people along the way to answer questions that I have, or I believe in Google and YouTube. I'll look it up and figure it out how to do it. But I've also come across a lot of business-minded people, IP attorneys who give freely their time and their knowledge. So that's how I've been able to navigate through this business so far. Is just learning from other people, other people's mistakes, and just doing research. The difficulty in the business getting started, initially it wasn't too difficult until marketing had to happen, advertising, logos, like technical things that I didn't know how to do. That's when it started getting a little difficult. But honestly, putting together a nice spice in a jar and calling all your family and telling them you have it, that was the easy part. But when I had to get a website, I don't know anything about building a website. I don't know anything about creating a logo. Vistaprint was my go-to for business cards, because that's what everybody used. So there's been some challenges that I've had to overcome, but I've been able to do it with just reaching out to people who's willing. In the beginning, the first person I reached out to kind of gave me the cold shoulder because they didn't want to share their trade secrets, I guess, but it was just basic questions. And that's when I made the vow that once I learned something, if someone wanted to know, I was gonna tell them, because I didn't want to stifle their dream, and there's nothing wrong with helping the next person. I started the spice business officially in 2017. And so I've been doing it, that's what, 5 years now. And it's been a journey, but it's before 2017, I was doing it kind of freelance. I was just selling to family and friends, but to make it official, created a LLC and did things properly, got the right licensing. That was official in 2017. And that allowed me to not only sell to family and friends, but I actually went through the FDA process so I could sell to all 50 states and not just in the state of California. So that meant I had to go from doing it at home to renting a commercial kitchen. So I do rent space in a commercial kitchen, which allows me more freedom. It's ready to go into a grocery store at this point. Anytime I do third party selling, people buy wholesale and then they resell it. So I'd say, well, that's 5 years. So it's been 5 years. So the timing of the business from when I started, if I had started prior to then, I don't think I would have been ready. I was living in a different state. So where I was living in Ohio, the spices I don't think would have done as well as they do out here in Southern California. And it's just the demographics. In Ohio, I would have needed to do desserts. I would have needed to stay in that realm of food because that was really a huge thing at that time. And I actually wanted to open a dessert shop. As you see, my life is always revolved around food. But now in Southern California, I think it's perfect. It's better timing because people are cooking more. They want to cook more. And I'm able to reach a wider audience as far as like college kids. This is a military city, so you have a lot of new moms or families that move from place to place, and food is that bridge, that gap cultures together. So the timing of it, I believe, was the perfect timing. So currently being a cake decorator, working for another company, actually, it motivates me when I think about also owning a spice business, because one, it gives me knowledge on definitely like better customer service, keeping up with the trends of what people are looking for and what they want, but it also motivates me to want to retire doing what I love. So the spices, combining those two things together actually has worked out for me. It gives me ideas on what blends to make, because there are quite a few spices that work well with dessert. So it keeps me focused on creating flavors that are unique. And on the business side, because I work for a grocery store chain, it actually helps me in my business by learning the difference, like the profit margin, what's a good profit margin for selling spices, where I should be versus where I am, learning how to buy and sell products, the cost of things. So being a cake decorator, working in that environment is actually helpful in my spice business, because it's teaching me business without me having that formal education in spice, in business that I don't have currently. My long range goals are to, one, not have to go to work at Smart and Final. Although I love decorating the cakes, there are other things that come with that, like I may have to stock or, do stuff I don't want to do. But my long range goal is to sell spices in different states. I love doing vendors events where I can talk to people about the spices and the flavors and different things they could pair with it, different foods they could cook. So I would love to eventually get a co-packer to where I don't have to actually make the blends myself, and then just travel to different states and do different markets just to get the word out about the spices. And eventually a couple of stores. It would be nice to have a few on the shelves in different stores. Currently I have 5 of my top sellers listed on Walmart.com. So, just things like that to help make to get the word out, to establish my brand. My advice to anyone who would want to just go in business in general, if you can have a business plan, great. But if it's something that you wake up thinking about, you go to sleep thinking about, do it. And even if you are afraid, do it afraid. I knew God was with me in this business and anything that I choose to do. So it was something that it's always come natural for me to just take the leap and worry about the other things later. And with knowing that God loves our dreams and our plans and our desires, if we put Him first, then I know that whatever I choose to do, He will be there to help me. So do it without the business plan, without having all your T's dotted and your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Sometimes a good idea is just a good idea, and you have to take that step. Not having all the answers right away, the answers will come, especially if you look for them. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And if, one person tell you no, don't get discouraged. Just ask the next person. But I would definitely encourage anyone, if they have a dream, to go for it. Because if you don't, you'll never know what's gonna happen. During this process of starting this business, what I learned about myself is that deep down, I'm fearless. Like, I don't mind working for something that I really want, and that people who love you will support you. And honestly, people who may not know you, they'll support you too. Like, you can't be afraid of rejection. So I did learn that rejection, it can hurt sometimes, but you get over it and you just keep going. I also learned that I am very resilient, that the adversity that I face with being a Black business owner, a woman in business, or even, sometimes that little voice that tells you that you're not good enough. Push past that, because I've learned about myself that, again, I'm resilient, and that I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. And as long as He is my strength, then everything that I set my mind to do, if it's in His will, it can be done. And I learned that my support system is huge. I knew people supported me, but I did not know the depth of how much people supported me. And so that was definitely something I learned in this journey. Being a business owner for me is freedom. Freedom to do what I love and not be stuck in one way of doing things, what the world think I should be doing. Being a business owner means that I can be proud of my accomplishments at the end of the day. If something goes wrong, then it's my fault. If it goes right, it's my fault. You know, so it's freedom. It's freedom in not having to make someone else rich. You know, can make myself rich, and rich is not always monetary. Rich is in how I feel about myself, how I feel about my accomplishments, how I feel about who God has created me to be, my talents and the things that are uniquely mine. So just the freedom in being a business owner is probably the biggest reward for me. I would just like to close this out by saying that I definitely appreciate anyone who supports me, whether it's verbally, financially, buy my spices, tell a friend, buy a gift for a friend. Just knowing that I am walking in my purpose is amazing.